Good afternoon. I'm Kermit Whitfield, a member of the CMC Board of Trustees and Director of Communications at United Way of Central Ohio. It's great to see everyone here today. Today we have the perfect forum for spring as we present Bicycle Power on the Path to Bikes. This forum is brought to us with support from MORPC and presented in partnership with Franklinton Cycle Works and Outdoor Pursuits. Let's thank them. The benefits of riding bicycles for daily transportation are undeniable. Studies indicate that people who ride bikes to commute and run daily errands are healthier, have a much lower impact on the environment, and actually buy more from local businesses in bike-friendly areas of town. And building bike infrastructure costs a fraction of what we spend to accommodate car-centric lifestyles. Just to give you a taste of what we spend to accommodate cars, it's been estimated that one parking space in a new parking structure costs about $20,000, one space. And 83% of downtown workers drive alone every day. So it's no wonder that almost a quarter of downtown land is devoted to parking. But things are slowly changing. Both millennials and boomers are moving into urban areas and demanding more walkable and bikeable environments. Our city has many bike champions and has been investing in infrastructure like new trails and even our very first protected bike lanes. For more on where we are and where we are going, we turn to our experts. Please welcome Director of Public Service, City of Columbus, Jennifer Gallagher, Director of Planning and Environment, MORPC, Kerstin Carr, and our host and moderator, Executive Director, Yay Bikes, Catherine Girves.
Thank you.
Catherine, the podium is yours.
Thank you for inviting us today. My name is Katherine Griffiths, and I'm the Executive Director of Yay Bikes, and it is my pleasure and honor to share the stage with these great transportation professionals. So we're going to be talking about why it makes sense to accommodate people who are traveling from one place to another by bike, whether you bike or not. But first, let's see who's in the room. Who here at least occasionally uses a bike to get from one place to another? Who here wishes they could bike more? There's some barrier in the way. It's time or safety, or keep your hands up. Who here is interested in biking but not yet biking for transportation? Okay. So the numbers here are pretty reflective of what the national data tells us and what we've done some local research. Over 60% of the population identifies either as somebody who rides at least occasionally for transportation or somebody who's interested. At Yay Bikes, we call those folks the bike curious. People who they'd like to bike, they're just on the edge of it, but they're nervous about something. They're nervous about, what if my kid gets sick? How do I get home quickly? How do I carry my laptop, which I need to carry back and forth in the rain? Or they're just plain afraid of cars and crashes. So let me check a few more things here. Who is completely disinterested in cycling? That it's just not something you're going to do. You might be interested in cyclists, but okay, well, that's unusual. There are usually some folks that fit that category. And we increasingly are getting fewer and fewer people, but I'm going to ask it. Who here is actively disdainful of people on bikes? Okay, well, that's good. We got a friendly audience. And again, the numbers of those people are going down and down. So there is some information here for everyone, though, whatever category you fit. And I am going to join my friends on the stage as we talk about why we care about biking, what we're doing in our professional lives, and what's happening in Central Ohio as it relates to biking for transportation. And Director Gallagher, I'm going to let you start. Tell us why you care about biking as the Director of Public Service and why that matters.
In public service, one of the things that we're responsible for is the transportation that you use every day in the city of Columbus. And to us, one of the most important things that we can do as professionals is make sure you can get from point A to point B in a safe manner, no matter what mode of transportation you choose. And we are seeing that more people are wanting to get out of their vehicles, and whether it's walking or biking or taking transit. And so we feel it's our duty, also something we enjoy doing, but it is our duty to make sure that they all have choices.
So one of the things that the City of Columbus is doing that's a little different than I think anybody else in the nation, I've spoken at some national conferences recently, is you're the transportation professionals within the Department of Public Service are actually designing a little differently than they used to. Tell us about that.
So we actually, when we start a project, we now are having our engineers ride bikes on those projects. And at first, it was kind of funny, when we first started this, it was a little like pulling teeth to get them out of their chairs and out in front of the computers and onto a bike. And actually, I've done some of those rides. And what we are seeing now is we have 8 to 10 on every ride, and it's almost like, well, I want to go. And they will, they'll bring their bikes to work that day, or they'll ride their bikes to work that day. We have some at the department, and they will sit in the seat and go ride that the current road or whatever it is that we're looking at, and really start to look at it from the seat of a bike, and how is this going to impact those that are making that choice.
And I've noticed, as somebody who rides for transportation, that the designs have changed. I noticed in particular the initial designs for Summit and 4th in the University District and Italian Village, from Hudson Street over to the 670 Bridge. They look differently as enacted than they did when what you thought you were going to do.
Right.
And we had the privilege of riding with some of your folks on that. And I think one of the things that strikes me is when transportation professionals, sometimes those of us who are cyclists have this idea that they just don't understand us, that people hate us. But the truth is, when transportation professionals actually understand their job from the seat of a bike, it changes the design. It's for the better. I noticed with the protected bike lane, it was actually wide enough to put street sweeping equipment through there, and snowplow removal. So,
Yep. We, I think several years ago, if you look at some of the streets in Columbus, you'll see, the 4-foot bike lane right up against the curb, right up against the lane of traffic where the cars are going, 45, 50 miles per hour. And we were like, well, we're putting in the accommodation, so they should be happy, and everybody go do your own thing. And now it's, we're up to where we're understanding that, no, it needs to be a safe environment. And so we're getting more to the 6 or 7 feet. We're doing the buffers. We now understand, after doing those rides, that, oh, wow, there's such a thing as a door zone, and trying to stay away from that area. And just things that we just, quite honestly, didn't really think about when we weren't using those facilities ourselves.
that's fantastic. So Kerstin, tell us what's happening at MORPC, why people at MORPC care about bikes, and what you're doing about it.
Yeah, so MORPC is the MidOhio Regional Planning Commission, and for those of you who don't know us, it's a volunteer association of over 60 local governments here in Central Ohio. We're serving a 15-county region. And we're really concerned about quality of life issues and economic competitiveness. At MORPC, we also are the designated Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Central Ohio region, where we provide transportation planning and transportation funding. In my department, Planning and Environment, we're really focused on the active transportation piece, so pedestrian and bicycle walking. And we realize that creating that active transportation infrastructure is really important to provide a high quality of life to our residents, and to also be economically competitive against other regions, to attract and retain people here and have the talent that we need.
Talk more about the economic competitiveness of it.
So we recently, well, it's not that recent anymore, probably a year and a half ago, finished a study called Inside 2050. And for those of you who haven't heard about it, it really looked at the demographic and economic growth in Central Ohio over the next 30-some years and how that growth could be accommodated. And what we found is that we will be adding at least 500,000 people to Central Ohio by the year 2050. 2/3 of that will be by natural birth, and 1/3 will be by migration. And so that 1/3 is really could be smaller or larger, depending of how attractive as a region we are. Our partners were the Urban Land Institute of Columbus, who represent the real estate and development community, as well as Columbus 2020, which is our economic development arm. And Columbus 2020 was especially interested in that study because their number one objective is to try to get businesses to locate in Central Ohio. And one of the first questions they get is, will you have the skilled labor force for me to employ? And so they understand that it's shifted. It used to be that people follow jobs wherever they are. Now jobs are following people because people are looking for a certain lifestyle that is walkable, that is compact, that is mixed use, bikeable. And so the jobs are attracted to the areas that can offer that lifestyle because they know that people want to live there.
And I know that when we talk about the walkable communities being attractive to people, that oftentimes people think about young professionals, keeping young professionals in place. But we also have a significant aging population coming. What do you know about folks aging and biking?
Yes, in terms of the demographic growth that's coming up to Central Ohio, our aging population, 65 and older, is actually going to double by the year 2050. So it's going from about 200,000 people to 400,000 people. And we know that those are the baby boomers coming into retirement age, becoming empty nesters. And a lot of them are saying that they are interested in more walkable, bikeable, mixed-use communities where they can downsize and still live a very active lifestyle. So there's a lot of, from the research that we know, a lot of interest in that type of infrastructure that we are talking about today. And then on the other age end, the 16 to 34-year-olds, our young professionals, we also will see a demographic growth spike there, and they have very similar lifestyle expectations too.
We found one of the things we did last summer with the support of MORPC was a Ride Buddy program where anybody who lived or worked downtown for a 6-week period and wanted to replace a car trip with a bike trip, we would provide a buddy that would talk to the person, figure out what was important to them in making that trip, what the perceived barriers were. And we had some stereotypes about who was going to participate in that, but when we looked at the age demographics, not only of who was interested in cycling, because we surveyed 11 businesses, different types of businesses, they fell pretty evenly across age demographics, and the people who participated fell pretty evenly across age demographics. And so that's a piece that I think sometimes it surprised us. I don't know if it surprises other people.
And honestly, from a personal story, too, I'm from Germany, if you can't tell by my accent, but that's where I grew up. I didn't move here until I was in my later 20s. And my grandma lived independently until she died at 96 in her house, and she never owned a car, she never had a driver's license, and she still biked until she was about 85 or 86, and then she wasn't as good anymore to walk or bike, and she needed a walker. And so that's very, very common in European countries where you have that evidence of older adults biking way into their lives.
Well, and my children, who are 25 and 28, were in their 20s before they got their driver's license, and neither one of them has any interest in owning a car. They travel, my daughter by bus most of the time and my son by bike most of the time. But both of them look for the types of transportation options that don't require them to have the expense that's related to a car.
Right. Well, I'm talking to a friend of mine, actually, that I see sitting over there. They were doing interviews for a position recently, and one of the young ladies they were interviewing asked if there was a way for her to be able to bike to their job. She was looking at a couple, and she wanted to make sure that she would be able to get on her bike and ride to work every day and not have to worry about owning a vehicle. So it's happening, absolutely.
What role do you anticipate biking playing in the application that's going to come out that the City of Columbus is making to the U.S. Department of Transportation? And can you talk a little bit about the Smart City project and what role biking might play in that?
Absolutely. US DOT actually put out an application about a couple months ago, and they were offering $40 million, which was also going to have a match from Vulcan for $10 million for one city, mid-sized city in the United States. And we found out in March that Columbus was one of the 7 finalists. They were going to pick 5, and they ended up picking 7, and we were thrilled with that. And now we are actually working on the final application that's due at the end of the month. And we're looking at a couple of different pillars, but one of those is bringing up and giving opportunities to those areas of town that have not had those opportunities before. They call them ladders of opportunity. And the location that we're really focusing on is Linden. However, one of the things that the USDOT has asked us to be able to do is make sure that whatever you do in that one particular location, you can transfer to not only other locations in your city, but that then they can take to other cities across the country. And that's one of the things they like so much about Columbus, is that we are a city, a Midwest city that is growing, that the things that we do here, they do believe are going to be very transferable to others. But one of the things that we're looking at are those transportation opportunities. Mayor Ginther, one of the things that he really is focused on is Celebrate One, which is making sure that babies across Central Ohio make it past their first birthday. And what we're finding is a lot of those issues are the moms don't feel like they have access to health care. And so one of the things that we're working on is, well, how can we give them access? How can we make it safer for them to bike, especially early on, to get to those health appointments, to walk, or to take transit? And because a lot of them can't afford a car and really don't even want to have a car. So that's one of the pieces that we're really trying to focus on and work with not only the neighborhoods, but also the healthcare systems and how they can incorporate those that are trying to ride their bikes there and so forth. So like I said, we're working on it with one particular location, but then hopefully that is something that we'll be able to move around the city.
And I know that bicycling for transportation really is a ladder of opportunity
Yes.
for many people, particularly folks in second or third shift jobs or who have the opportunity for second or third shift jobs. We don't have a public transportation system that accommodates that population that work schedule very well. And you can bike someplace even at a pretty slow pace, even at I'm not trying to sweat, that's the pace I ride at. At 10 miles an hour, and you can get in a 4-mile radius in 20 minutes, which if I live in Wyland Park or Milo Grogan or the Near East Side, where we see some of the highest density of poverty in Central Ohio, there are employment opportunities that folks can get to. So biking for transportation is really key for those populations. One of the things that we do at Yay Bikes, we know that changing a mode of transportation is taxing. It can be logistically challenging. It can be emotionally challenging for people. And so one of the things that we do, we had the Ride Buddy pilot last year, but almost all of our public-facing programming really focuses on getting people comfortable riding roads under current conditions. As much as we are interested in influencing the experiences that people can have on the road by influencing folks who can influence those experiences, whether they're the engineers designing the road or the planners, or frankly even reporters who are talking about cycling in the community and how they report on crashes. We're interested in helping people today, right now, figure out how to get from where you want to start to where you want to end by bike and how to address those barriers. One of the things that we've found is when people are trying to make a change that's outside their frame of reference, particularly in an environment that doesn't feel supportive, that it's really hard to do that, even if you want to do that. If it was easy, then we would all be on that diet we meant to be on, and we would all be, making that career change we've been thinking about for a long time, or, any other number of things. We know that people are successful when they're making those changes that are big changes when they have a cheerleader. And so that's a huge focus of the work we do, is helping people learn to ride roads and get places under the current conditions.
Well, and you've done that with our staff. You've come in and worked with our staff to help them understand how to get either from where they live to work or from work to just meetings downtown. We've got great Kogo bike stations across town, so even if you live far away and have stops to make on the way or whatever, but once you're at the office, then how they can take that bike and go to various meetings or so forth. It's been wonderful.
Well, and under your leadership, I think the receptiveness to not just us influencing the experience of your staff, but the influence in how engineers are designing. We helped put together the first engineer ride, and So when women work together, sometimes we collude behind the scenes and say, you know, I had the opportunity under the previous director to sit with Director Gallagher and then Director Davies and look at a map of downtown Columbus that showed what 3rd and 4th are going to be by this time next year. They're going to be great, by the way. And what the bike infrastructure was going to be like on that road. And you know, it was an enviable position. They said, tell us what we're doing wrong. Now, I really want to be queen of the world, and I really want to be the one to like make those decisions. But we know that if you, the intelligence of a group is always better than any one individual, and it's better to teach someone what they need to know so that we don't have to keep looking in. We can let transportation professionals do what they do. So I asked if we could take those plans to our membership, share that with our membership, which is approaching 1,000, and then invite people to ride that corridor with us. And then we took a couple people out on the road, and it was incredibly helpful that in addition to the engineers who were riding with us, and they were a little reluctant. The body language was like this at the beginning of the ride. It was a Tuesday night at 5:30 in October. It was rush hour, and we were getting ready to ride 3rd and 4th downtown. But, you know, then Deputy Director Gallagher was there saying, well, I'm in. And the then new James Young came. So there was clearly staff support for the engineers on that ride. And it was fascinating how people's body language changed during the course of the ride. It went from this to pulling out plans and making notes. And I think by the time we got 3/4 of the way through the ride, there was a red Sharpie, and there were 4 heads around a plan at a particular intersection, redrawing things. And the truth is, we weren't saying anything different than what had been said in public meetings, but when you feel it, like, it's different. People get it. It's the difference between teaching someone to fish and giving someone a fish. So just the receptivity to that was incredible.
I absolutely agree. We took our staff out with Yay Bikes and Catherine as well, and we thought we were experts already in the active transportation infrastructure. We still learned a lot of things, and I'm a huge believer of this effort of taking people out and letting them experience the infrastructure on their own. And so one thing that I want to try is see if we can get Yay Bikes scheduled with communities around Central Ohio to have elected officials, to have the engineers and development directors ride with her for their community to really figure out what makes most sense, what kind of facilities make most sense on what kind of streets, because they differ, they're context sensitive.
Right. So tell us, there's some other exciting things coming up at MORPC. Tell us about Bike Month is coming, and there's all sorts of cool things coming.
So many cool things going on at MORPC. One thing that I want to mention, because I have the stage and I have the chance, last year we created the Central Ohio Greenways Board, and Catherine Girves is one of our members. We have a whole board table here with members from our board, really focused on the vision of creating a world-class network of trails here in Central Ohio. To increase the number of trails we have and to increase the usage of people using the trails. And when we talk about trails, I want to make sure too that the connectivity to the trails is a very important part of the COG board too. But we just released the Central Ohio Greenway Strategic Action Plan. You should have a couple copies at your table. This lays out the 5-year action plan for the Central Ohio Greenways Board, and we're happy to have volunteers participate on the 4 working teams that we have in terms of marketing, partnerships, trail development, and programming. There's Amanda. She's my lead staff for the COG board. So please see me or Amanda afterwards if you want to get involved.
And the connectivity thing, I think one of the things that's been really fantastic that the City of Columbus has done is looking at, we've got, you know, a completed Scioto area with the bridges now connecting, you know, how far north does that go? I mean, it goes way past Westerville, and very far south. So now that we have bridges, people can go a good distance north and south there. And the Olentangy Trail to the Scioto Trail you can go a good distance north and south, and what's happening on roads connecting Scioto to, can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So, and I was actually just talking to one of the gentlemen at the table. We have these great trails in Central Ohio that our Department of Rec and Parks works on, and Metro Parks works on, and we're starting to have some great roadway infrastructure. The next thing that we are really focusing on, and I think even at the national level they're talking about focusing on, is those connections. Because if you've got all these great paths that go this way and nothing that goes this way to connect them, or vice versa, how do people really start using them and get from point A to point B? So we are starting to look at either where those small connections need to be or those larger connections need to be. And we are also talking about context-sensitive solutions as well. One of the other big things I would like to mention real quick is we are in the process of redoing our thoroughfare plan at the City of Columbus, which sounds very technical, and it has been in the past. It was done the last time 30 years ago, was very car-centric, and basically all it looked at was what the width of the roadways needed to be throughout Columbus to handle all the traffic that could possibly grow to be on these roadways. And what we found out is that wasn't beneficial to neighborhoods, it wasn't really realistic, and it definitely was not multimodal, and it's 30 years old. So about a year ago, we undertook a very large endeavor to update it. And we called it Connect Columbus because we're connecting all the modes of transportation. And we've gone out and done lots and lots of public involvement. Our team will be back, our consultants will be back in town the second week of June. We will be back out talking to a lot of people again, really getting input, trying to figure out, you've got freight on roads, and there are roads that need to be focused on freight. We obviously don't want to put pedestrians and bikes right in the midst of freight traffic. But you've also got neighborhood roads or even collector roads and arterial roads that could be those connections for the bikes or pedestrians. And so we're really trying to focus on, for each road in Columbus, what the context of that road needs to be, and really make it where it's what the neighborhoods and the citizens of Columbus want. So hopefully that'll also help us really kind of pick out where those connections need to be.
And you're coordinating that at a regional level, too, at MORPC. Can you talk about that?
So one of the things that we're excited to roll out for Bike to Work Day is the 5th edition of the Columbus Metro Bike Map. And if you are not familiar with it, this is the piece to have. It will look different. This is the current one. We'll have a new one here in about a month. But it basically tells you exactly where those off-road trails currently are, where there are bike facilities that are separated from traffic but along the roadway, and also how comfortable the roads are to travel on as a bicyclist. So there are 3 levels: green, yellow, and red. And red says there's a lot of high speeds, much truck traffic, maybe not very wide shoulders, so it's very uncomfortable for a bicyclist who's not at a... Yeah, exactly. And so we are partnering with the City of Columbus, Yay Bikes, and many others to help us identify the comfort levels of bicyclists who ride those routes every day. And they are really, they're true. I actually started to bicycle to work last year, all the way from Reynoldsburg. I take the bus, so I bike to the bus, take the bus, and then bike into downtown. And that bike map really helped me identify what my best route is, and especially on my way back. Sometimes I want to have an hour workout, so I need to find a bus that drops me off somewhere near the trail so I can get that hour in. And one of the bus stops I took was on Gender Road. There was a park and ride, and the Gender Road is very, very red. And it's true. It is very, very red. I mean, there are no shoulders. They're broken off. But it helped me prepare for it and know what I would expect when I get there.
Yep. And one of the things we do at Yay Bikes is help people figure out how to ride on Gender Road. We do monthly rides that start and end from the same place, and they're 12 months out of the year, so there's no bad weather, just bad wardrobe. And we help people find the interesting back routes. If the idea of being on Morse Road with a car is going to make you cry today, here's a back way around. But then we also put people on Morse Road and Cleveland Avenue and Gender Road and teach them how to keep the proper lane position. I think sometimes as cyclists, we're just like motorists. We're nervous. We're confused about how to be on the road generally with each other. and we'll move too far to the right to stay out of the way of the big metal machine, and that often makes us unpredictable to cars, to motorists. What makes sense at the speed of bike, moving out of the way of road hazards or cars, looks unpredictable and crazy to a motorist at the speed of car. And so we really teach people what the proper lane position is and and when you maintain that lane position, not only is it going to make you safer, but it's going to relax the motorists around you. When you can ride in a way that's predictable and visible, gender road can work if you've been trained how to ride on those types of roads. Well, we are going to have questions in just a few minutes, but let me give you each a moment to have a final thought. Kirsten, do you want to?
Sure. So my final thought is to challenge you all to actually think about commuting to work by bike. And MORPC, together with the City of Columbus, Car2Go, and KOGO, is putting forward a commuter challenge for the month of June, and there will be prizes for people who actually have at least one day within the month of June that they bike instead of driving their car alone. So I want to challenge you to be part of that activity.
Jennifer?
I would say my final thought is to be patient with change. We are learning as we go. Cyclists are learning as they go, but then also the motorists are learning. One of the things we've seen on our cycle track location on Summit is that the interaction between the two is changing, and people are being more courteous of each other. And I think if we all just take a deep breath as we're driving or pedaling or walking and just pay attention to everybody around us, makes for a lot safer roadways.
And my final thought is you can do it. I swear you can. And you don't have to do it alone. Like, that's what people think. Don't let the bike that's been sitting in your garage collecting dust for the last 7 years put you into a spiral of shame. It is not your fault that you haven't figured it out on your own. It is a tough thing to figure out on your own. But with a community of people, and with just a little bit of preparation, it's amazing what a 2-hour experience can prepare you for and go, oh, I didn't know what I didn't know. So it is the Columbus Metropolitan Club tradition to take audience questions. Please state your name, ask your question, and we thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments. Let's proceed with the first question.
Thank you. I'm Jane Scott. You took a poll at the beginning that the detractors are obviously not here today. Not to be devil's advocate, but let's talk about the people who are not supportive of the money and the investment, or tearing up a perfectly good thoroughfare like Summit Street to add this huge, monstrous curb and bike lane and all that. What are some of the objections you're working with, and the validity of the comment that we're still very much a motor city? We're still investing a great deal in our highways, obviously, because they're all torn up right now. And the balance that we as a community, what's the correct balance of how much resources we should be putting into this compared to other opportunities?
Well, and it's interesting, on Summit, I had to field some of those phone calls of very angry motorists at first. And the things that we were hearing is, I pay the things, it's amazing the things people say, but I pay taxes, the cyclists aren't paying taxes. This is slowing down my commute. They're making it unsafe. And actually, I believe you pay taxes.
In fact, I do. Yeah.
And we also found that it didn't slow down the commute. It actually, when you give very good directions to people on where they need to be in the lanes and what they need to be doing, we found that and that's why I said be patient. Those first couple weeks when people were learning things, yes, it slowed some things down. Maybe it didn't feel as normal and as safe. But you get past those first 2 weeks and people understand how to do things. And we've seen the speeds are now back to where they should be for a residential type roadway with houses facing the road. But it added 20 seconds to people's commute time. So those are a lot of the things that we hear. The balance, that's actually what we're really trying to figure out in Connect Columbus. Our bike projects, usually cost a lot less. Usually we are doing them within a roadway resurfacing or something like that, so we're not tearing up the road just to be tearing up the road for a different type of mode or anything like that. But we are still working on what that balance should be. In Connect Columbus, what we are seeing is those projects that really rise to meet the vision and the goals of the community are those bike projects.
I think it also comes down to providing transportation choices for people. Just because you like to drive alone, that doesn't mean others do. And so to make sure that they have a safe infrastructure to get around the way they want to get around is just as important.
And one of the things I learned from advocates within the Americans with Disabilities Act community was when you accommodate folks with disabilities, it's actually better for everyone, and I think we have seen that clearly on Summit Street. When you accommodate cyclists, it actually is better for everyone. The car-to-car interactions there are more courteous. It's just a more pleasant roadway for everyone.
Thank you. My name is Kermit Whitfield, and I made my long editorial comment earlier, so you don't have to worry about me. Studies that I've read indicate that there are a lot of folks out there who would like to bike but aren't comfortable with it, and that the best way to get them there are the kind of protected bikeways that have been bike lanes that have been put in over on Summit. I know going to other cities, New York, Chicago, lots of other towns have really embraced this and invested a lot of money in building hundreds of miles of protected bikeways. New York and Brooklyn now is really remarkable as to how many they have. I'm just wondering if there is any initial feedback from this, what seems to be an experiment with the protected bike lanes, and if so, is there anything that you can say about what we can expect in the future to make this more throughout Central Ohio?
We are doing some studies on Summit. We've got some cameras out there where we're trying to take counts and see the usage and so forth. Don't really have that data yet. Unfortunately, we had to open those lanes about fall time, so probably not our highest use of those lanes, but we will kind of keep those cameras going for a year or so and then really analyze that data. We do have some other locations, other projects in town where we're looking at it. What we are actually seeing a lot of times is there's still a little discomfort with, you've got curb to curb usually, and taking some of that real estate, especially from parking. And so that's really it's a lot of education. It's education that we're working with the A-Bikes to educate those property owners of, just because we're taking parking doesn't mean your business is going to fail, actually. She works with them and helps them understand that the bicyclists can also add to the business and so forth. But those are the things that that's why it's a little slow at times, is just trying to educate people as we go rather than just ramming it down their throat. When you do something and people don't want it, they're never going to accept it. Where if we can educate them and kind of work through the process with them, then they're much more accepting and accommodating.
And it's been helpful, the communities that you mentioned, we see sales tax revenues in the corridors where cyclists are accommodated. It is true that accommodating cyclists actually is good, particularly for small local businesses. Cyclists spend money, and it's easier to park a bunch more of them than it is to park a bunch of cars. And so doing that education around that and continuing to put that information out, I think regionally we're also seeing, like Grove City comes to mind, a lot more multi-use paths along the side of roads. Like, this is coming. When bikes show up in car commercials, we know we've hit a tipping point.
Good afternoon. My name's Nancy Rieger. I do work at the MidOhio Regional Planning Commission. But my question is, you've talked a lot about educating cyclists on how to deal with cars. I'm curious, has there been any effort to alter the driver's test or to educate people learning to drive of how to, accommodate cyclists so that there's that education from the driver's side as well?
So a couple things are going on. One, the Ohio Department of Health and the Ohio Department of Transportation are both doing a statewide plan right now, and one of the components that has come out of that is looking at the driver's test and looking at adding some additional questions there. Another thing that we're finding is we're pretty we like data at Yay Bikes. We do surveys, and they're entertaining, but we're gathering information all the time about what we do. And we realized about a year into surveys that people were telling us things that we weren't asking on the survey, and one of the things they were telling us was they're better motorists. So we've started measuring that, and what we find is most people who bike and bike for transportation don't do that exclusively, but when you train a cyclist how to ride safely, you're actually educating a motorist. And we've got the data that's showing not only have the behaviors of people that we're training to ride roads safely changed, but we're measuring the viral impact. Are they talking to other people about it? What specifically are they talking to other people about? And so we think training cyclists is actually impacting the behavior of motorists.
Mark Klein with MKSK. I just wondered, when you're doing all the great work you're doing and continuing on providing bike lanes and facilities to bring people into the communities, people are coming. What accommodations are being made with regards to supporting them? And I'm thinking of bicycle parking. I know a lot of other bigger cities sometimes in a first level of a parking garage, they'll take out 2 spaces, they'll put up a fence, there's a key card, and people have a place to put their bikes safely, and it's marked that that's a public bike space that commuters could use. And in addition, there's others for those that are going greater distances, shower facilities, lockers, and things like that. I know the city of Dayton, in their confluence, they built an urban bike hub that was part of a study that was taken from Portland and Seattle, where they've got lockers, and they actually have a small room that when the need arises, they bring people in, and they can actually do bicycle repairs. That's part of bicycle safety. So you could bike in, clean up, change your clothes, leave your bike there, and if something needed to be worked on your bike, or is there some kind of a private kind of engagement that could be made so this could actually get as synergy and energy, so as people are coming to the downtown area, they're actually promoting it and accommodating it more than just bike racks.
We're getting ready the city is actually building a parking garage at the corner of Long and Front, and there is a piece of that has been carved out for a bike hub. You know a little bit more about that. You want to kind of talk about specifics?
I didn't know I was allowed to talk about specifics. I'm very excited. Yeah, I think there's a bike hub coming to the city of Columbus. We work informally with businesses, and one of the things we know is Petal, Ohio EPA, when you build a bike room, people use it, and that's good for all sorts of reasons for employers when people use active transportation. But the city of Columbus is in the midst of building a bike hub. We're working with them to say, well, what would success look like, and how would this be marketed, and those sorts of things. We're in the midst of writing a report for that now, and we'll see who the operator is. But yeah, I think that's coming. It will have showers, it will have lockers, it will have places to fill your water bottle.
Also, MORPC has a program called Ride Solution that helps people get to work if they don't own a car, other than by car. And they've been working very closely with downtown employers to make sure that the employers have showers, lockers, and other amenities in place to really promote commuting to work. And then we also are partnering with the city of Columbus on creating a park and pedal program. We have 2 parks currently where repair and fix-it stations are installed, Dodge Park and Academy Park, but we're hoping to expand that further. So that is basically for folks driving into downtown, parking at these parks, and making the last mile trip with their bikes.
Hi, Gary Schmidt with G2 Planning and Design. First of all, I want to say thanks to everyone who's made our trail network really good. It's really working good, especially the connection with Metro Parks. I don't know if they're here today, keeping them clean. My question is regarding the 161 connector, which was on the master plan. And I know a couple years ago, the City of Columbus tried to push it forward. There was some neighborhood opposition. I guess I'm just kind of wondering where that one's at.
So we actually took a step back after that, and we have partnered with ODOT and MORPC and the township and the city of Worthington. And all those partners have come together. They've put the money in, and the ODOT is actually leading it. And now they're looking at not only the bike portion of it, but what else to do with that roadway. And so they have got a consultant on board, and they are working towards a larger solution for that whole corridor from 315 to Sawmill Road. Yep.
Hi, thank you very much. Very informative. I am a cyclist. I love to ride my bike. I also have 3 kids, and I love to be alive. So my biggest barrier when you drive on the highways, it says, motorists killed or traffic fatalities this year, and it's actually continuing to go up. So I love to be brave and bold, but the motorists, the deaths in cars are increasing. So I can't help think about cyclists. So just wondered if you could speak to that. And then also, the map is great, but when I'm on my bike and I'm riding, I don't have a map in front of me. So I'm wondering if there's any kind of technology. Catherine, you were saying that Yay Bikes does a lot of research and you have a lot of data, but even things like potholes or streets that are rough, if you could plot in your route where you're going and you could have something in your ear telling you where to go so that you're not trying to navigate a map as well. Is there anything like that coming that would make it much safer and easier for us that are not interested at all in riding on Gender Road ever?
Well, let me address the second thing first. Julie Walkoff at ODOT has a fantasy app that she's been working on, that she's been trying to make happen. That will let you easily report potholes through a single phone app, which will then distribute it to the appropriate governmental agency that can address, is it a pothole? Is it broken glass? Is it, what's happening that's making this trip horrible? Google Maps is another source beyond the paper map. That's usually where I go first when I'm going to travel someplace new by bike. What does Google think? You've got an option. It does a default to travel by car, but you can actually change your travel mode in the top, and it'll tell you, here are 2 or 3 ways that we would suggest traveling by bike. And so that can be helpful. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about when you talk about road surface is, you can build all the infrastructure you want, but if it's not maintained, if you don't sweep the lanes, if you don't remove the snow, then drivers are going to be even angrier because they're confused about why you're in one of the regular travel lanes instead of a bike lane when there's a perfectly good bike lane that they can't see is full of broken glass. And one of the things the city of Columbus has really done is stepped up operations of bike facilities. So I'm excited about that.
Can I add something about the bike map? There's actually an online version called the Interactive Bike Metro Map, and there's additional information and layers on there. It doesn't go into the detail of potholes, but it's an online version. We are working and looking into making this an app as well, or at a minimum, as Catherine said, seeing how we can work with Google to make sure that they have all the appropriate information that we have as well.
That would be great, because I think a lot of cyclists are also directionally challenged, and so there are some people that know exactly where to go. There are others of us that need a little support, so that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Schwind. I'm with AAA Ohio Auto Club, and I think those bike maps are great, and what you guys are doing is really great. AAA recently launched a bicycle breakdown service, and so we're really trying to reach out to people to help to keep them safe. So we'd love to give those maps to people. How can we get a hold of those? Is there a way? Are they available to the public?
Yes, they will be available on morpc.org/bike maps. Yes. If you go to morpc.org/bike maps, and there will be a link to contact us and request the information.
Wonderful, thank you.
And so excited to hear what AAA is doing.
Yes, that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Winstein with Urban Ultralight, and just a couple weeks ago I learned of something called rapid design and implementation programs. One was done in Calgary and one was done in Spain, and I'm just wondering, have you guys heard of that idea? And if so, does it have any relevance to what we're trying to do here?
I've not heard of that.
I have, and that's really more of a question for engineers, but it's a way to do some of the urban tacticalism that was done as part of the Connect Columbus plan to try some things out, to create perhaps a separated bike lane in an area with planters and other things. It was done in New York for a little while before they took over some of the streets like Broadway. So, that's for the engineers, and I'll share that information with them,
So we
too.
actually have a project on Mound Street, for instance, on the west side of town, where it's a 4-lane roadway, and we're actually taking it to a 3-lane and putting in some more sidewalk bike type things on the sides. And actually, that's going to take us a little while, because to move the curb in, you got to move all the sewer and sanitary and la-da-da-da-da. Anyways, so we actually this year are going in and just putting pylons on one of the lanes to make it a 3-lane with pylons, so that 4th lane can be used by bikes and cyclists. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
She's doing it.
So, but we're trying to think of things to get things in quickly while we're working on the long-term solution.
Great. Thank you.
Great. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. I thought it was great. You can view and share today's forum and all of our forums on CTV Columbus Television, on WOSU and PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on CMC's website via YouTube. Please help me thank our sponsor, MORPC, our partners, Franklinton Bike Works and Outdoor Pursuits, and our speakers, Jennifer Gallagher, Kerstin Carr, and Catherine Girves. And thanks to all for being here today. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.